Hey, it's Aloha Falava. It's out with Dr. John Peterson here, and I'm with TE2 Sports Cards. Hope everybody's doing well out there. We've got a cold day here in Minnesota. I got out and about this morning, and it was about 6 degrees, so definitely a chilly morning. Definitely not as cold as it does get, though. Sometimes we get negative temperatures up here in Minnesota, and occasionally it gets to negative 40 below with the wind chill. So relatively speaking, not too bad. Up here we got a nice sunny day, so should be nice out. Hey, I was looking at my analytics for my channel, and it looks like close to 60% of viewers have not subscribed. Super appreciative of the folks that have subscribed and like the channel and leave comments. But if you watch the channel, I would just ask that you subscribe and leave me a like and or a comment. But definitely subscribe if you're watching on any sort of a regular basis. If you're only watching it once in a great while, then I don't think it's necessary to subscribe. Hopefully I'm getting sound here. If somebody in the chat could let me know, give me a thumbs up if I'm getting sound. I tried to do a live stream earlier this morning, and for whatever reason I wasn't getting sound to come through, and so hopefully this is coming through on the audio end. I checked out the video and did a video, just a test run, and everything seemed to be working okay. So hopefully it's okay. So I'd like to talk a little bit today about this notion of technology gaps that exist between printing technology, printing machinery, and the technology that's used to grade cards. I was watching Bobbles and Ball Cards. If you haven't checked out that YouTube channel, I think he does a fantastic job. He doesn't have tons of subscribers, so check out his channel. And if you like his channel, subscribe and like his videos. One of his most recent videos, though, was raised some really interesting questions that I hadn't thought about. Well, I guess I've thought about it, but I hadn't really put a lot of thought into it. He was saying that he's opened up and bought a fair amount of ultra modern product, whether it's been basketball or football, or I think in the example that he provided, it was hockey. And he was lamenting a little bit and talking about this wondering of, is the quality of the printing keeping pace with the technology that's used to grade ultra modern cards? And I think it was a very interesting question to ask. He didn't necessarily come to a conclusion, but he did put it out there pretty strongly that, he's got a lot of examples of hits that he's gotten from boxes that he's broken open that have had print lines and or creases. And he gave some examples of some bigger hits from some of these boxes. And his ultimate conclusion was that he thinks Bobbles and Ball Cards, now I'm talking about that YouTube channel, he thinks that it's easier to get a hit of a card that is pretty rare in a box than it is to get a card in a high quality condition. Now, I could be restating that incorrectly, so go back and watch his video. I think he titled it, "Is this the biggest issue in the hobby right now? Is this the biggest issue in the industry right now?" Because it's a great video, and he asked some really great questions. I love his channel. I've only been watching his channel for maybe a couple months, and I really like what he puts out there, along with a lot of other content creators. So this had me wondering about PSA pop reports for certain years and sets of cards that I particularly enjoy, right? Everybody enjoys different sets, different products, different brands, different eras of cards, whether it's football or basketball or hockey or Pokemon cards or whatever it might be. So I thought what I'd do is do a live stream here and see if anybody wants to check this out, either comment live or watch this afterward and leave a comment. But I thought I'd share a little bit about my process and some of the wonderings that I had as a result of watching Bobbles and Ball Cards yesterday, watching that video. So for me, I tend to focus more on vintage. I don't really do much with ultra modern. In fact, the most recent, and I don't even know if this would qualify as ultra modern, but the most recent box that I've opened up in the last year would be 2013-14 hoops, which I don't even think is ultra modern. I've been under the impression ultra modern is like just in the last 4 or 5 years, something like that. So whether you consider 2013-14 to be ultra modern or modern, that's the most recent box of product that I've opened up, and it was basketball. Overall, I thought the quality of the printing was pretty solid. I haven't had any of those cards graded, however, so I really don't have a sense of anecdotally what I'm going to get back for grades. I use a group submitter. I use Got Baseball Cards, so they screen my cards. I also screen them myself with a loop, and try and minimize the amount of screening that the group submitter has to do. All that being said, um, that's the most recent product that I've opened up. Um, I've opened up a fair amount of 2001 Topps Chrome over the last 20 years. I was a big Pujols fan and Ichiro fan. And so in 2001, I bought some Topps Chrome update and traded, or Topps traded an update and got some Chrome cards out of that, and also bought some Topps 2001 Chrome as well as some 2000 Chrome. And so I have bought Chrome over the years, but mostly from the late 90s and the early 2000s. And I've had varying success with the quality of the cards. One of the things that has been a problem with Chrome cards from the late 90s and early 2000s is that the cards stick together and they tend to brick. This is particularly problematic with cards from about 94 up through the early 2000s. I can't really speak much past 2001 because I really didn't buy any baseball cards, baseball product from 2001, really until the present, until now. I haven't really bought a whole lot of baseball the last 20 years, like packs. Singles, of course, yes, but not packs. So one of the issues that I found with, like, say, 98 Topps or 98 Bowman's Best, right? Or 97 Bowman's Best, like Ortiz is a rookie in those years. I think it's 98, is that the cards stick together and sometimes brick. Okay. Especially if they're gloss finished and they've been exposed to, temperature variation. I've gotten boxes of cards where I've had to just return them or toss them because they were totally destroyed. Every time you pull the card apart, you've probably seen it. You see a bunch of card loss and the card is worthless. That's also happened with 2001 Topps that I've bought, where I've seen cards bricked. I've pulled an Ichiro rookie from 2001 and had to throw it away because it was just destroyed. There was so much card loss. So my point being is that there are certain years where either the printing of the card was problematic or how the card kept over a period of time was problematic, especially if it had a gloss or a chrome finish on it, particularly glossy finish. The matte finish, not an issue. I've bought tons of boxes, not tons, but I bought a fair amount of boxes of early 90s junk wax type stuff and have not really had an issue with bricking with those. Obviously, if cards get wet, you can get mold. I bought some 1989 Donruss recently and opened up a case of that. And I would say any number of the boxes had one particular stack of packs that had mold in them, but that goes without saying if stuff gets wet. I mean, it's just natural. But my point that I want to make is, there are certain particular players and certain particular sets and certain particular products that I enjoy more than others. I tend to stick to vintage and I stick to 52 to 1960. That's kind of my sweet spot for vintage. I don't really do a lot with the 60s vintage, especially like 65, 66, 67, 68, 69. I have a little bit of early 70s stuff, quite a bit of 76, 78, so there's certain years that I like to collect. And partly it's just because I like the way the cards look. I like the way the 78s look. I really like the 76s. 75s are nice, but not a huge fan of 73. Like, I don't like 73 tops, just the look, so I don't really buy much of it. But my sweet spot really is 52 to 60 when it comes to vintage. I don't really do much for pre-war. I have some 61s and some 62s and 63s. So having bought a decent amount of those cards, or owning a fair amount of those cards, I own a 57 set, a near to complete 58 set, near to complete 59, and near to complete 60 set. I've got a good amount of 56s. I don't have a ton of 55s, and I have probably 125 54s. Not a lot of 53s, not a lot of 52s, a little bit of each. But what I've come to find is there are certain years that do better grading wise than others. And so my speculation, my hunch was that between 52 and 60, if you just stick with PSA 7, which gets it into the registry, okay? A 6 doesn't go into the PSA registry, at least from what I can tell. But 7, 8s, and 9s, and rarely can you get a 10 in anything from 52 to 60. There are certain years that seem to grade better than others. Now, before I did this research and pulled these numbers, my hunch was that the best grading comes from the 1960 set. There's something about the 1960 set in terms of the way the cards were cut. The corners and the edges come off more crisp, and they tend to be more centered than some of the other years, especially the 58s. That was just kind of my, just guessing based on the cards that I've looked at over the years. So what I did is I pulled the data from the PSA pop report. I stuck with PSA 7s, and I took the PSA 7s from 52 to 60 and divided them by the total amount of cards that were graded. I didn't drill down to individual players, which I know is something that you have to consider, a factor, because the word on the street is that PSA grades some of the higher value cards a little more tightly than they do the common cards. So you have to consider that variable. I didn't go to that level of detail in terms of the analysis and the data pull. But just listen to this data. I think this is interesting, and you can kind of get a sense of the pattern that you see with this. 52s, so tops 52s, PSA 7 has a rate of 14.5%. Okay, 53 tops is 18%. That's PSA 7. I think the 53 tops are a tough set, and I'll show you why. This is a 53 that I own. It's a mantle and a, let's see if I can get the glare off there. It's a mantle in a CSG 6. The 53s, to me, the centering is an issue, always a centering. But this color on the bottom, typically there's one corner or two corners that show wear. So for example, on this card, you can see there's a tiny little bit of wear in the bottom left corner. All right. So overall, it's a 6 from CSG. I don't know if PSA would give it a 6. Maybe they'd give it a 5. Who knows? Tough to say with PSA these days. They seem to be a little inconsistent with the vintage grading. But 53s come in at 18%. 54s, which you think would not be that different from 53, come in at 23%. Let me show you a couple of 54s. So here's a 54 and a 7.5 CSG. Here's another one. That's a 7. Tough to get 7s in PSA or CSG, PSA, SGC in the 54s. Here's another 7. Here's an Antonelli, Johnny Antonelli. It's a 7. And then a Milt Bowling, which is a 7. Now, one of the things you'll notice is that all 4 of these cards that came back as 7s all have a white background. And the thing that's unique about the white background is that it has no border. Here's another one. This came back as a 6.5. This is a Hoyt Wilhelm. Also no border. Here's an Al Smith in a PSA 6. You can see that this one has a border to it. So when it comes down to the 54 top set, for the 50 or 60 cards that I've had graded, the cards that typically grade the highest are the ones that have the white background and no border. Okay, partly because the corners don't show as much wear. So my point being is that there's unique factors within every set that make some cards in the set grade a little bit higher than other cards in the set. And that's the case with the 54s as it pertains to the ones that have the white background. 55 tops, PSA 7s, 23%. Then you see a jump from 55 to 56 of 3.5 percentage points. And I'm not surprised because I have more high quality 56s. I actually have a few 8s. Let me see if I can show you. Here's a 56, another mantle, and a 7.5. Here's a spawn and a 7. There's something about the 56 top set, and I don't know if this was the printing quality or the machines that were used to print compared to the stuff from the 52, 53, 54, 55. But there's something about 56s. They come out cleaner. They come out more centered. Corners come out better. 57, there's another jump to 28.5%. And then in 58, it drops down to 26%. So it goes up and then it goes down. Not surprised because of the 58s that I own, there's something about those cards. They typically seem to snow or wash out more. The registration isn't as good, and they just tend to not be in as good a shape as some of the other cards, 57, 56. 59's 27.5%, and 1960, get this, 29%. So between 52 and 60, you go from 14.5% with 52 all the way up to 29% with 1960. Now, that's a pretty big range. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years difference, right? So it's kind of hard to compare across that big of a span. But if it were me, right, and I was going to invest or just collect cards from the 50s and I was in it to get the best grades possible, I'd probably go with 56, 57, and 60. Those would be the 3 years that I would focus in on. And I would focus in on them in terms of like looking for raw cards, right? Sourcing, mining for those cards. So imagine you go to a card shop that has a whole bunch of vintage, like 3-Star Sports cards in Bloomington here in Minnesota. Those would be the first sets that I would ask for. I'd say, let me look at your 56s, let me look at your 57s, and let me look at your 60s. Because on average, those seem to grade higher than the other years. Now, granted, if you love 53s, then you're going to buy 53s. If you love 55s, then you're going to look for 55s. But just purely on a grading perspective, PSA 7, 56, 57, and 60 seem to be the best years from the 50s in terms of their overall pop reports in PSA at the PSA 7 level. I'm not going to look at 60s and I'm not going to look at 70s because I don't have as much experience with the 60s and the 70s. But I will say anecdotally, like the 68 set I've heard is really hard to find centered. Same with 67. Like the late 60s, something happened with the print quality, especially as it pertained to centering, that makes those cards really hard to find centered and in a high grade. And with vintage cards, a lot of people will tell you that eye appeal really starts with centering. If it's not centered, a lot of people don't want it when it comes to vintage. I'm like that. The card's got to be centered. I'm trying to think if I can find an example. I don't have anything sitting out here immediately. So the next group of cards that I looked at were 1983 baseball. I looked at 83 Topps, 83 Fleer, and 83 Donruss. So of those three different brands, the brands from those 3 years, which do you think would have the highest PSA 9 rate? So I went with collector's grade, 1980s, PSA 9, didn't do PSA 10. Listen to this data. So the 83 Topps, and I don't know how this compares across Topps for the 1980s. So I didn't look at 80, 81, 82, 84, 85, 86, and so forth. I just went across the three different brands. And partly why I did that is because I own some of this product. I have some vending cases of 83 Topps. I've got some factory case sets of 83 Donruss, and I've got some wax of 83 Fleer. And mostly because there's the three big rookies and a lot of Hall of Famers in 83. Frankly, I think 83 is the best year to buy cards from the 1980s. And it's not even close. Sure, if you can get the 80 Topps, that's great because you can pull a Henderson. I don't really mess with 81. 82 is okay, but Cal Ripken. 84, some nice cards in 84, especially with the Donruss cards. Those are really nice cards. Don't really mess with 84 Fleer. 84 Topps is nice, but really you're looking at Mattingly and who else? Mattingly, Strawberry. I can't think of anyone else in 84. 85 is okay. You got Puckett, Clemens. Clemens isn't in the hall yet. 86. I don't really do a lot with 86 base. The top border, the black, it's impossible. It's like condition sensitive. I do have quite a bit of 86 Topps traded, and I think I bought like 22 boxes of 86 Topps traded last year back in January. I got them, I don't know, 50, 60 bucks a piece. This was before Bonds was up for the Hall of Fame. I think I've opened up maybe half those boxes, 11, and I have not pulled a 10 yet, and I've had pretty much all of the 86 Topps cards of Bonds graded. Bo Jackson, 86 Topps traded, damn near impossible to find centered. I'm going to tell you that right now. I pulled this one out last week. This one looks pretty clean. It's centered. Usually the issue is there's chipping at the top, or there's chipping along the left-hand top side of the black. So this is probably the cleanest version I've seen of this card of the 10 or 11 different boxes of 86 Topps traded I've pulled out. And of course I do the 86 Topps traded because of the Bonds and Jackson. And I guess you could say Canseco and Will Clark too. 87 Topps. I've got a fair amount of that, but I'm not a big fan of the wood grain border. 87 Donruss, I've got a fair amount of that. 87 Donruss actually doesn't do too terribly bad. Let me see here if I can find an example. So I bought some 87 Donruss boxes here the week of Black Friday. I think it was actually on Black Friday. Pulled out this Maddox. Pulled out this Maddox. Now, what you'll notice about each of these Maddoxes is that they're all pretty well centered left to right, a little bit top to bottom, but overall pretty good. The thing that I was noticing about 87 Donruss is that the corners and the edges came out pretty clean. I didn't see a lot of dings and wear on the corners when I opened up. How many boxes did I open up? I think I've opened up 2 or 3 boxes of the 87 Donruss. So from my perspective, 87 Donruss, and I didn't look at the data, grades better than 87 Fleer. 87 Fleer, centering left to right is always an issue. But the biggest issue with 87 Fleer baseball is chipping at the top on the back. Oftentimes there's chipping, and if you get a centered card, it's hard to find it without it being chipped on top. Let me give you an example. Here's an 87 Fleer Bo Jackson. Nice card. Probably my favorite Bo Jackson rookie card, maybe other than his 86 Topps traded. Centered, right? Looks nice. The issue is on the back, there's chipping at the top. It's faint, right? But it's the difference between it being a 10 and a 9. So although I love 89 Fleer or 87 Fleer, hey, what's going on, Brent? Although I love 87 Fleer, I actually like 87 Fleer better than 87 Donruss. From an investment perspective, I wouldn't spend more money on 87 Fleer than I would on Donruss. I just think Donruss comes out of packs cleaner than 87. 88, I don't really do much with 88. I don't really particularly find any cards interesting to me in 88 Topps or 88 Donruss or Fleer. 89, I don't mess with 89 Topps. I don't really mess a lot with 89 Fleer for the same reason that I don't really have a ton of 87 Fleer. The back top usually has chipping, right? So you find yourself a nice 89 Fleer Griffey, the chances that you find it centered are decent, but the chances that you find it without the chipping on the back are not. So when it comes to 89, I don't really mess a whole lot with 89 Topps, a little bit with 89 Fleer. I like 89 Donruss. But again, the centering left to right is so hard to find. I opened up an entire case of 89 Donruss over the last couple of weeks. Some of it was damaged due to water, which I wasn't aware of when I bought it, but I got it pretty cheap. I got like $25 a box. But a couple things that I found out about that, the 80s Fleer chipping is brutal on the back. Yeah. So you got to stay away from it. I mean, I don't know what it was about the printing or the cutting, but it's tough. The 89 Donruss, a couple of things I found of the 20, was it 20 or I think it's 20 boxes in the case, I would say 25% of the boxes didn't even produce a Griffey Jr. rookie. So 5 to 6 boxes didn't even have one in it, which I thought was odd. You get tons of Ricky Jordans, tons of Alex Sanchez's, but like, and usually not one single box had more than one Griffey Jr. So if you found one, there was only one. And I don't think I found one that was centered. Did you pull your 89 Donruss from a sealed case? I did. Yes, I did pull it from a sealed case. Yep. So that was interesting to me. But going back to what I was saying about 83 Topps, 83 Donruss, and 83 Fleer, I really like 83. It's my favorite year of product from the 1980s. I like it better than 81, like it better than 81. I mean, you're looking at Fernando Valenzuela, Harold Baines, Kirk Gibson, that sort of thing. 82 is the Ripken. But 83, you've got Gwynn, you've got Sandberg, and you've got Boggs as the three big rookies. And then you've got a lot of Hall of Famers that end up retiring in 84 and 85 and 86. And you've got Nolan Ryan, you got Reggie Jackson, you've got Johnny Bench. I mean, a lot of those guys hung around for about 83, maybe 84, and then retired. So here are the PSA 9 rates. Viola and Gaetti rookies too. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, those you'd be surprised. Frank Viola rookie card is worth more than you'd think from 83 Topps. So which between Topps, Fleer, and Donruss from 83, which one do you think has the highest percentage of PSA 9s? Got 3 people watching here. If you want to comment, go ahead. All right, so I'll tell you, 83 Topps, the gem rate is 32%. Or not gem rate, but the PSA 9 rate is 32%. Which is shocking to me. That's actually pretty high for 83 tops. I mean, that stuff's like 40 years old. So 32%. Now, here's the thing about 83 tops. You have to drill down and go to the rookie cards. The gem rate for a Tony Gwynn 83 tops rookie card is less than 5%. So I don't know I don't know exactly what that's about, but it's very low. The pop count for the PSA 10 Gwynn is like 684 gem mint 10s out of like 20 some thousand that have been graded. Sandberg's a little bit better. Boggs is a little bit better, but Gwynn definitely is the hardest to find in a gem 10 in the 83 top set. 83 Fleer, 37% PSA 9. So whatever Fleer was doing in 83, they were producing, technologically speaking, their printing was producing cards that were grading pretty highly. 83 Donruss, 34.5%. Again, relatively high. So I think those, and I haven't looked at this, but I'm curious, how do those rates compare to the PSA 9 rates for like 87 Donruss, 87 Fleer, 87 tops? Because to me, those are the two big years, 83 and 87, between 1980 and 1989, right? If I'm going to invest in something from the 80s in baseball, it's going to be either 83 or it's going to be 87, right? So I want to compare and contrast how they're doing PSA 9 wise. I don't do PSA 10 because I stick with the collector's grade. I think the PSA 10 gem rates are a little skewed. So then I did a little bit more analysis and data pulling of some random stuff. I was curious about 88 and 89 tops. So check this out. 88 tops, I bought probably, I don't know, I probably ripped 6 or 7 boxes of 88 tops, chasing Bo Jackson's rookie card. Haven't pulled a PSA 10 yet. Haven't pulled a CSG 10 yet. I've pulled some 9s, pulled some 8s, 8.5s, but no 10s. I have found the 88 top set to be frustratingly off-centered. 30% PSA 9 rate. 89 tops, however, is 49% PSA 9 rate. That's 19 percentage points increase between 88 and 89. So one of the questions that I would ask is, do you see that corollary in baseball as well? There is no 88, 89 basketball in tops, right? So if you're going to invest in football from 88 and 89, you got to balance a few things. One, you got to decide, do I want to chase the Bo Jackson rookie card in 88? Or do I want to go with 89, which doesn't have quite as big of a rookie card in it, but get higher PSA 9 grades percentage-wise? I did also look at 89 score because I had a hunch that 89 score had a pretty decent PSA 9 rate. Part of the reason why I say that is I bought some binders of cards back in April, and there was a box of 89 score. It wasn't wax. It was just pulled cards. It was like the set. And I found that the 89 score was pretty well centered and came out relatively clean. There's an example. 89 Rice. The issue with the 89 score is that the borders are colored. They have multicolored borders. Gemming 1880 score football. I'm telling you what, that stuff is not cheap. I agree 100%, Brent. I think if you're going to buy football, if you've got a little bit of money to spend, 89 score. It's loaded with rookies, and I think the quality of the printing that Score was using in 89 was better than what you see with some other product. Of course, not 89 tops, because 89 tops is PSA 9ing at 49%. But then again, 89 tops didn't have the same level of hits that 89 score has. So I'm going to test this theory out because I picked up a couple boxes of 89 score during Black Friday. Got a pretty good deal on them. And I'm going to open up a box of that and see if this hypothesis is true about 89 score. I'll send them into PSA and see how I do. A couple other sets that seem to grade pretty well. The early 90s Stadium Club. And I didn't pull the PSA rate. Let's see where that is. Oh, I can't find it. I'm going to leave it. But 91 top Stadium Club, 92 top Stadium Club, partly because there's no border. So you're not dealing as much with centering on the front. Of course, centering on the back is a little bit of a different issue. We've got a comment here. It says, I used to buy pro-graded sealed boxes around 2008 to 2012 and crack them. Now prices are very high. Pro set, is that what you're talking about, Brent? Pro set, 2008, 2012. So another year that I looked at was 1993 Pinnacle. So I had a hypothesis that the 93 Pinnacle had a pretty high PSA 9 rate. It didn't, 16.5%. 96 Metal Universe, 13%. 1990 Leaf 10s, PSA 10s. So a lot of people like 1990 Leaf. Oh, Pro was a grading company that graded singles and sealed wax. Oh, okay, cool. Cool. Never heard of them. 1990 Leaf, 19.5%. 90 Tops, 18%. 90 Fleer, 30%. Now, this is at the peak of the junk wax era, 1990. Probably more cards were printed in 1990 than just about any other year. Donruss was 21% and Upper Deck was 22%. So depending on what you're looking for, just strictly based on PSA 10 rates, best cards to buy in 1990 Donruss. Or not 90 Donruss, but 90 Fleer. I'm trying to think the 90 Fleer is the white border, right? There's a Griffey in there. It's a second-year card, so it's not his rookie card. So it's not as valuable as the 90 Tops rookie cup card. Let's see here. So what else? I think that's pretty much it. That's kind of what I wanted to say. So the question that I have is, what do these numbers look like for ultra modern? All this stuff that people are ripping open, 2022 Bowman Chrome, Sapphire, Panini. What do these numbers look like for PSA 10s across these different products? Because this newer stuff is not cheap. It's expensive. And you would think that the quality of the printing would be commensurate with the cost. And that the grades that you would get back would be enough to fuel you buying more cards, at least minimally, to have enough to break even to buy more. And that's really what a collector's mindset is, that you want to open some stuff up, and if you can upgrade, if not, at least break even. And we all know that like opening up wax is not a good investment, a wise investment. You do it because you enjoy it and it's fun. But at some point you have to ask yourself, and I think Bobbles and Ball Cards asked this question too in his recent video, at what point do you just stop? You stop buying the new product because you're getting hits, but the hits aren't coming out with quality printing. And you're taking a hit with the grading companies who are using ever more like fine or complex or advanced technology to grade the cards. So that's part of the reason why I stay away from ultra modern. Now I know, like for kids and for a lot of people, ultra modern is really a lot of fun to open up, and man, no judgment, but for me personally, I don't mess with that stuff. Partly because I just think the cost is pretty high. Now I do have some 2020-21 Panini Prism. I have 3 boxes of that I picked up a while back, and that's on its way here. I don't think I'm going to open that. I'm scared. Frankly, I'm scared to open it because I don't want to have spent the money and then not get the return. I'd rather keep it sealed. So anyway, 1992 Bowman is loaded with rookies and typically grades well. Yeah, I saw some of that 92 Bowman wax on sale at Steel City Collectibles. I ended up going with 83 Fleer instead. But the 92 Bowman's got some really nice rookies in it as well. And but the discount was like closer to 15%. And on the 83 Fleer, it was like closer to 26%. So part of it you have to factor in is, what's the cost you're paying for the particular box, wax, that sort of thing. I love the 2001 Bowman Chrome. I think the 2001 Bowman Chrome is one of my all-time favorite sets. But it's expensive. At least it was back in 2001 to buy. It's even more expensive now. And the centering on the 2001 Bowman is iffy, left to right. So anyway, I thought this would be somewhat interesting. We've got 7 people that are on now, so I think, unfortunately, I'm going to shut this down and probably do a traditional video and open up something. 2001 Bowman Chrome is tough with those black borders. It is. Yep. Yo, what's up? Hey, good to see you, Vintage Cars. Yeah, you too. Yeah, Brent's been on. It's been great to see people on. I love 2001 Bowman Chrome. So here's the deal. You can pick up 2001 Topps Traded Update for anywhere from about $1,850 to $2,200. The hit rate on that particular set is pretty high because the checklist is fairly low. You've got a Pujols card, rookie. You've got an Ichiro card, a rookie. You've got the Pujols Ichiro. Here's the Ichiro. Or is this the Topps 2001? Maybe this isn't the traded. Oh, let's see here. Where do I got that? So, I mean, you can pull, but again, $2,000 for a box. But here's the question: how many hobby boxes a 2022 Bowman Chrome is equal to one box of 2001 Topps Traded and Update? So the Bowman Chrome is selling for what? Topps had it on their website for $270. And my hobby shop, local card shop, my LCS had it for $300. So you could get about 6 or 7 boxes of 2022 Bowman Chrome, which, I mean, you're chasing Churio and some of those other players who haven't played. Or you can go out and you can spend $2,000 and get yourself a box of Topps Traded an update. So I pulled this out of one of those boxes. You remember the Topps 2001 update had Chrome cards inserted. I think every pack had a Chrome card in it, if I'm not mistaken. Pulled this. That's pretty decent. And then pulled this. This is out of one box. Whoops, a little glare there. So these were the 3 biggest hits. I did hit a non-Chrome version of this card as well out of that box. Now, will I get 2,000 out of these 3 cards? Iffy. Not with PSA. Maybe. Depends. Maybe if I get 9s on all 3, it's possible. But what would I get out of a 2022 Bowman Chrome, like 6, 7 hobby boxes? Like, what's the risk look like, comparatively speaking, across those 2 products? Bowman Chrome 22 and Topps Update. Maybe it's not a fair comparison because the 2001 Topps is not all Chrome in that box. So basically my point is, there are certain years and there are certain products from certain years that grade better than others. And my hunch, my suspicion, is that part of it relates to updates to the printing technology. So I'm curious to see what Fanatics is going to do with Panini, because right now, from what I hear across a lot of content creators on YouTube, is that the quality control with Panini's printing process is not good. It's not good. And if it doesn't improve, one has to ask the question as to whether or not Fanatics is really going to buy out Panini. What does Panini's, like, what do their printers look like? I mean, for me, I've got a printer, works, but it's like 6 years old. It's an HP. So when my iMac went down about a month and a half ago and I got a new iMac, I didn't replace the printer. Now here's the problem. The iMac install doesn't match up with the computer or the printer. So now I can't scan. I can print off of it, but I can't scan because the two don't talk to each other. So that sort of thing, right? Technology mismatch. And right now, PSA, CSG, SGC, they're ramping up the tag. Look at tag. Look at the technology behind tag. It's insane, right? Is anyone going to gem mint on tag? I mean, I'm sure there are some gem mint 10s that come out of tag, but like if the print quality is here and the grading technology or the print technology is here and the grading technology is here right now, that's a big gap. So what I'm looking for is in the 1950s, how wide was that gap? Across each year, 52, 53, all the way up to 60. What's the gap look like? To me, the best year, 1960 tops, 29% PSA 7 rate. Compare that with 58, which was 26. 3 percentage points. You might think, well, that's not a lot. Well, it's more than you think. I mean, if you've got a Mickey Mantle, right, you want a higher percentage of getting a 7 than you do for 50 from 60 than you do from 58. I see personally, I watch a lot of this stuff on eBay. I see more 7 and 8 60 Mantles than I see 58s. Now that also means that the 58 is probably a little more scarce, a little more rare to find in a PSA 7 or a PSA 8, but ultimately you want to get the highest grade you can get for the different cards that you've got. This year, 82 Topps football, maybe 2 to 3 cards are centered in a pack, but more typically 1. So this pull of this Munoz rookie card, not easy. Out of an entire box, actually, I'm sorry, 2 boxes of 82 Topps, this is the stack of cards that I pulled that are centered and not perfectly centered. Let me give you an example. Pretty well centered. Pretty well centered. Pretty well centered. Now, why do I like 82 Topps? Well, obviously it's because it's Taylor and it's Lott, right? You got a Montana second-year card. You've got the Walter Payton in that set. And I just like the design. I mean, of the 80s Topps, 82 is my favorite design. So that's what I invest. I don't really do a lot of 81 Topps because the boxes are super expensive. And the centering on 81 Topps is atrocious. Let me show you another example. Let's see, what do I got here? The Taylors. So just to drive home a point, the last box of 82 Topps football that I opened up produced 3 Lawrence Taylor rookie cards. They came out like this. So what do you think PSA is going to give that? PSA is going to give that like a 5. Came out like this. Came out like this. All 3 off left to right. And I pulled out 2 from the other box and they were all off left to right. So Some particular years have patterns in which cards are centered and which cards are not. And I've found that the tailors tend to be off left to right. So there you go. So if you're going to buy 82 tops, look for this card. If you're going to buy 82 tops, look for this card. But if you think you're going to get 82 tops and start pulling these out, think again. Because you're not likely to see that happen. If you're buying 54s, go with the white border if you're looking to get a higher graded card. If you don't care which, I mean, if you're just in it to collect, that's fine. But if you're into grading, your best chance are the white border 54s. Almost every 54 that I've sourced has pulled a 7 or higher. 56s. So anyway, I'm rambling on. So hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully this is informational. I want to give a big shout out to Bobbles and Ball Cards. Bobbles and Ball Cards, hard to say that. I really appreciate his videos. I think his most recent video, you can find it, is this the biggest issue or one of the biggest issues in the industry and hobby? I think he asked some really pertinent questions. And ultimately what it comes down to is, what are we as consumers, dealers? A lot of people make a lot of to do about, well, you're a collector, you're a dealer, you're an investor. Frankly, we're all consumers. We're all in the same boat. We consume this product called sports cards. And we have to ask ourselves, at what point do we say, yeah, I'm not going to buy that. I'm going to leave that on the shelf. I'm not going to buy 81 Topps football for $2,000 or $3,000 for a box, because the chances that I pull a card that's centered is 1 per pack. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to take that big of a risk. Go with something else that produces a little bit better results in terms of the grading that you get. So anyway, thanks for watching. I appreciate each of you. We got a bunch of comments here. I didn't even look at these. Yo, doctor, did you get any sales on my slabs? Put some up at good prices, but doesn't seem that it gets much traffic. So yeah, my comment on that. I have not sold a lot in the last couple weeks. Stuff that I have sold in the last month has been pretty niche. So I've sold probably 3 or 4 1964 Topps stand-up cards, but they were in PSA. The most recent CSG graded card I sold was a Ken Griffey Jr. Rookie card from 1990. $25 on that. CSG is not moving from what I'm hearing very much. But then again, that's not totally surprising, because as PSA's prices go down from economy 30, well, it used to be 50 and even more than that, economy 30, and now bulk at like 18, 19, 20, depending on whether or not you use a group submitter. It's putting pressure on CSG, right? More people are getting cards graded from PSA. It's causing CSG to feel some pressure. Now, when I looked at the gem rate data from November, if you're not checked into or liking or following gem rate on Instagram, you should definitely check that out, because gem rate, I check gem rate on a regular basis. It looks like PSA, the number of cards they graded dropped from like 1,050,000 to like 900 and some thousand, partly because of Thanksgiving. But it looked like CSG, because of the price reduction from 15 to 12, actually raised their percentage rates for cards graded both with sports cards and with TCG cards. So check out that gem rate data. SGC dropped. I mean, not a ton, a little bit. And BGS rate remained mostly flat. There wasn't really a lot of up or down with the number of cards they graded. But keep an eye on what's out there for deals in terms of grading. I think SGC's numbers should go up, because they've got the deal with Topps regarding the 2022 Bowman Chrome, $9 for the Bowman Chrome to be graded. But I'm going to caution you folks that are into CSG, do not fire sale your CSG slabs. If you feel like you have to move something, snap it open, crack it, and cross it over to PSA. And if you do, try and look for stuff that's 10 that you have or 9.5. Now, I'm not going to tell you that there's a one-to-one corollary between a Gem Mint 10 CSG and a Gem Mint 10 PSA, because it's not a one-to-one. I mean, I've seen some people on YouTube who have cracked open CSG 10s, and they get, let's say it's a hypothetical, they put out 10 cracked CSG Gem Mint 10s, and they submit them to PSA. And from what I've seen, they get approximately a 50% gem rate with PSA, and the other 5 are 9s. All right, so there's not a one-to-one correlation with that. Secondly, if you have nice CSG 9.5s that you really need to sell it, like I'm going to crack this open. I'm going to crack this open. I'm going to crack this open. And I'm going to crack this open. This is a 9.5. I think this is a 10. And in a 10, this is an $800 card, $700 card, right? So I'm going to crack these open because I think there's a legitimate shot that one or two of these could be a 10 in a PSA slab. I mean, I don't really need to sell it right now, but I'd like to see if I can get a 10 in PSA in that. But the thing is this, remember, CSG is a longer term play. All right. So if you're expecting to move CSG slabs right now, it's just not going to happen. Do not, under any circumstance, this is my own personal opinion, I do not under any circumstance do auctions on eBay with CSG. I don't even list cards on eBay in CSG slabs. All right. The only place I list CSG slab cards is on my slabs. And I comp them at the same price point as PSA based on Card Ladder, 130 Point, and Terapeak eBay. I triangulate those 3 data sources, and then I comp it what I think is going to be a decent price. Also on my slabs, when you put your cards on my slabs, put in a best offer, but put it in like only at a level that you're willing to take. One of the things I've found is that I have lost more customers and potential buyers by countering their counter. All right. I would not recommend countering the counter on my slabs, or even on eBay for that matter, right? Countering the counter, I've lost more customers doing that, this is months ago now, than I do with setting the price at, let me give you an example. $58 Topps Sport All-Star, Sport Magazine All-Star mantle in a 3.5. I've got it listed at $200. I just repriced this and the price stayed the same. The lowest I'll take for this is $175. So that's what I best offer it as on my slabs. All right. If somebody offers me $175 for this card, I'm selling it. I'm not going to counter with $185 or $190. I can guarantee you 9 times out of 10, if I counter the counter and nickel and dime the buyer, they decline. So if you're using my slabs, my recommendation to folks is list it at the high end price and then best offer it at what's the lowest, what the lowest is that you'll take it for, and you'll sell more cards on my slabs. Do I move more cards on my slabs PSA than CSG? I do. Do I do any eBay auctions with PSA slab cards? Nope. Not now. Now's the time to buy those cards. If you look at like football's fallen off a cliff, right? If you're looking to get a Tom Brady rookie card, now might be the time to consider doing that, because football's in a nosedive. Baseball, on the other hand, is staying pretty flat. Basketball's in a nosedive, but not quite as severely as football. Vintage vintage is staying flat and high. Now is not really the time to buy a whole bunch of vintage because its value is holding, right? And that's why a lot of vintage dealers aren't willing to drop their prices. Now, if you go onto Card Ladder and you look at vintage, just put in 1960 tops PSA 8. You'll see that the trend line for a lot of those better cards has dipped a little bit. But some cards actually for vintage have actually gone up in the last month. And I know this because I reprice all my vintage because I do shows every month. And one of the most annoying things is to go to a table, a vintage dealer or dealer of any era, and see that they haven't updated their price. Well, number one worst thing, they don't have any effing prices. I don't even go to those tables. I'm not going to sit there and ditter about with somebody who doesn't even know what the price or the value of their card is. And two, that's just me personally. You can do what you want. And two, they have to update their prices. So if you got prices from like September on your vintage, you're out to lunch because vintage has dropped a little bit. Now, some of it's gone up. Most of it stayed flat. Right now, if I were really into anything and I wanted to buy something, I'd be going after football. And I'd be going after quarterback goats. Elway, Marino, Brady, Rodgers, maybe even Drew Brees, although he's, not as hot of a commodity as he used to be. But football's falling off a cliff, and I don't see it going anywhere soon. So check out Card Ladder, go to indexes. Ultra Modern has fallen off a cliff. A lot of people are in a real tough spot with Ultra Modern because they bought up here a year and a half ago, and now things have dropped so significantly. Got some more comments here. Let's see here. Got to bounce. Good talk. Later, Dr. J. Peace out, Brent. Good to see you. I agree with your analysis, but how many of those PSA 7s graded during the old PSA grading technology? Absolutely a factor. 100% agree midlife sports cards. The grading standards have shifted with PSA, right? And all you need to do is just look at the lighthouse. If a card, but here's the thing you can do with PSA. So I look for vintage cards, singles, that do not have the lighthouse on them. I'll give you an example. Oh, I can't find it. Yeah, I've got a 57 Topps male that's in a PSA 7, and I don't think it has the lighthouse on it. I like to look at the vintage cards that don't have the lighthouse on them because the standard deviations for what is a PSA 7, like with really good eye appeal, compared to a PSA 7 that doesn't have good eye appeal, is far wider than it is with vintage cards that have the lighthouse little mark or little sticker on the slab. So I think the opportunity for arbitrage with non-lighthouse slabbed PSA cards, PSA slabbed cards, the arbitrage opportunity is greater and wider with the non-lighthouse cards that have been slabbed by PSA than the ones that have. I don't know if that makes sense. Same with BVG vintage. So a BVG 8 of a 55 Bowman mantle has more standard deviations of difference in terms of the eye appeal with BVG than it does with, say, like PSA with the lighthouse, right? So when I look for opportunities to arbitrage, I look at BVG because you're just going to see wider variation in terms of what has the best eye appeal. If I'm looking to get something in a really, really nice crossover and arbitrage, I go to SGC. So I look at PWCC's weeklies, and I'm looking for opportunities to pick up an SGC 6 snap it and send it into CSG or PSA and get a 7 on it. And I've been successful doing that. I have snapped out some SGC slabs and gotten higher grades. I think SGC is the toughest grader on vintage, and it's not even close. I think with vintage, PSA is the most inconsistent grader. And that's partly a function of the fact that they don't have enough people on staff to grade vintage cards. That's why it's taking forever, months and months, for people to get their vintage back from PSA. Right? So PSA is heavy on the employee side right now for modern and ultra modern, but particularly ultra modern, right? Because that's where the money's at. There's less money in grading vintage for PSA right now. CSG, I think, grades a little bit higher, maybe a half grade higher or a grade higher than SGC. So it's helpful, I think, to give an example. This card, SGC 6, CSG 7. PSA, don't know. Looks pretty clean, right? I snapped that out of an SGC slab. SGC, 5.5. CSG, 6.5, 7. PSA, don't know. BVG, 7.5. It was in a BVG slab. I cracked it out. CSG, I think that's an 8. SGC, maybe a 7. PSA, don't know. So it gives you kind of a sense of where vintage is at with the different graders. And of course, there's far more vintage graded by PSA, like innumerably more graded by PSA than there is by CSG. And SGC's got a lot of graded vintage too. That's one of SGC's sweet spots, is the vintage and pre-war. So let's get another comment. Grading is getting tougher because their technology is so good. Sports Card Investor did a good video a while back at the SGC facility. Yeah, I saw that. Showed how they scan and can see wrinkles. Showed how their scans can see wrinkles to the naked eye that don't appear to the naked eye. Wrinkles that can't be seen by the naked eye. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you about football nosedive. What do you think that? Why do you think that is, though? The football nosedive. That's a good question. I think part of it relates to the fact that the cards that carry the most value with football are quarterbacks. And I think part of the reason why that is quarterbacks tend to play the longest relative to a career, other than maybe kickers and punters. So you got a lot of duration comparative to, say, like a running back. A really good running back in the NFL, how many years do they last? A lot of people have been talking about Steven Jackson's going to make the Hall of Fame. He should, because he was good for a really long period of time. Also, you're seeing more running back by committee than you used to see back in the day, with the exception of like Derrick Henry and maybe Dalvin Cook and a couple other people. So running backs just don't carry their value like they used to. You don't see Walter Paytons and Emmitt Smiths and, Barry Sanders and those types of guys. You see the same kind of talent level, but you don't see that carry forward throughout like a 10 or a 15-year career. Certainly not like Emmitt Smith. So there's that. Making the Hall of Fame for football, I think, is easier than making the Hall of Fame for baseball. And Deion Sanders talked about this recently in a YouTube video. Deion was complaining, he was bitching about the fact that there should be 2 Hall of Fames in Canton. One for the guys that are like really Hall of Famers, and the other one for those that are posers. Because he feels like people are getting into the Hall of Fame now for football that really aren't representative of Hall of Fame careers. I don't hear that same type of complaining as it relates to baseball. In fact, I think baseball is the opposite. You know, I think baseball is tougher to get into the Hall of Fame than it is for football. I mean, there are guys legitimately that should be in the Hall of Fame that should have been in the Hall of Fame a long time ago. You know, Fred McGriff. Fred McGriff should be in the Hall of Fame. Ken Boyer, I think, should be in the Hall of Fame. I'm not going to get into Bonds and Clemens and all those characters. You know, I think they should also be in the Hall of Fame and have their stats with an asterisk. But, you know, a lot of it is based on the Baseball Writers of Association. And if they don't like you, they're not voting for you. You know, whereas with football, I think the players, and I don't know this for sure, I think the veterans and the players and the guys that are in the Hall of Fame, their votes are weighted a little more heavily than they are when it comes to baseball. I don't think it's the exact same process. So I think football, as a result, the Hall of Fame piece means a little less than it does for baseball. And I think the same is probably true for basketball as well. But yeah, the nosedive with football, I mean, I don't know if it's like nosediving on modern or nosediving on ultra modern. I think ultra modern football is the second most volatile era of cards other than ultra modern basketball. Like if you really want to speculate, I think you speculate on ultra modern basketball. And baseball maybe too. Especially with like Bowman Chrome, Bowman rookies, that sort of thing. So much of the value of the cards are now baked in before you buy them. So, you know, Churio can go up in price, but like, what are the odds that Churio has a career similar to Pujols? You know, now Pujols isn't going to continue to go. The time to sell Pujols has already passed, right? So if you're wanting to move Pujols, that excitement in the run up to 700 or 600 home runs has, 700 home runs. That time has passed. Frankly, if you want to ask me, what do I prefer, Pujols or Ichiro? I think Ichiro is more undervalued than Pujols. And I think Ichiro has appeal that goes beyond just the United States. I mean, he's got a core fan base in Japan. You know, does Pujols have a core fan base in Santo Domingo that buys sports cards? I don't know. Dominican Republic? Not sure. He should. I don't know what the, capacity is for people to spend money on a luxury item like an Albert Pujols SPX 2001. You know, I really have no idea. Or a 2001 Bowman Chrome Auto. Couldn't say. So that's what I have to say about that with football. I like football though, but I really like 80s football. 90s football, don't do a lot with 90s football. Oh, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate the question, Midlife Sports Cards. Yeah, I appreciate the question. For 2000 football, I mean, really, what are you looking at for 2000s football? 2001, 2002, 3, 4. Who are the big hits 2000 to 2004? 2000, different story. That's Brady. Okay. But 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, what would motivate you to buy Chrome from any of those 4 years? Excuse me. I can't think of it. 2005, Rodgers, and to a lesser extent, Frank Gore. 2006 to 2009, not sure. Now, this most recent run of quarterbacks, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Tua, Fields, Hurts, Mahomes, there's some fantastic potential with a number of those quarterbacks. To me, Mahomes is the safest bet because of the style of play. But, his cards are also pretty expensive already. So I don't know what it would cost to buy, what is the rookie year, 2017 product and try and chase Mahomes. But I think if you want to get some singles, that might be a better route to go. So it just depends. Football, I think the injury risk factor with football is so high comparative to basketball and baseball. So that makes it a little bit more of a volatile market. And, Allen's already showing signs of getting dinged up. So you have to be careful with football, I think. But like I said, it's a nice time to buy, I think. If you've got the disposable income and you want to do a little speculating, go out and look for some opportunities to hit with football. All right, that's enough. I've talked a long time, way too much, over an hour. And I've got a meeting with a guy here at noon. Last thing I'll say is in April, Minnesota will be doing its first sports card show, statewide sports card show. They're inviting dealers in from all over the country, 300 tables at the Hyatt. Hopefully some of you will check this out and consider buying a table. I got a table for like 150, 200, 6-foot table. And that is for the full 3 days. So basically $50 a table, which is pretty standard going rate up here in Minnesota. $50 a table for a day. So come check it out. If you haven't had a chance, subscribe, hit the like button, leave me a comment. My name is Leotawa, Dr. John Peterson. You're watching TE2 Edge Sports Cards. Peace out and one love.